feel like now recording started, podcast voice has to come on. But Susan, what's your background in? Are you at VCU currently?
Yeah, actually, I work at VCU and I
Okay.
have worked here for the last 13 years. So I have an undergraduate from JMU in technical communication. And I feel like I'm one of those people who can do just about anything. Like I'm good at a lot of little things, but I really want to be able to hone in and focus and grow, some strengths, I have a background in art and I love art and drawing and painting. I have not really been able to do that, recently, just time. But, working at VCU, I work in the construction side of things. So in the beginning, I worked a lot in CAD and doing CAD drawings and maintaining, our building database. So I've migrated quite a bit, but all kind of under that umbrella. So I feel like I've tapped a lot of components as far as like contract administration, design, but underlying, I have this deep desire to follow through with my own dreams because I'm just a problem solver. Like if I am facing an issue, I just immediately start going into this thought process. What can I do? What can I do to fix this or make this easier? And I think a lot of that has to do with the background in my family, that I grew up under problem solvers is how I would describe it.
Yeah, I think so. I come from a design background also, and then went into advertising. Uh, and one of the things that I've loved the most about the MPI program is like honing in on the problem here and starting there and then building solutions off of that. Because I am somebody who's very quick to be like, this is what we should do. Here's how we can do it. Uh, and now I've learned to fall in love with this. Like, okay, what's the problem? What are we like really solving for here? And then building off of that, which has been a slight shift for me, but it is so much more beneficial when trying to talk to like other stakeholders that aren't too in tuned with the process of like designing something where you can say, hey, this is the problem. Here's why we made every single decision that we ended up making.
That makes sense. Well, and then, and a lot of times in my thought bubble, I'm like, oh, I can see the solution, but I don't know how to make it.
Right.
and
Yes.
and like I feel like I can be very heady. I have all of these ideas exploding, but I just want to be able to take them out of my head and make them tangible, and then start experimenting. Does this work? Oh, okay, it's solving maybe this component, but it's missing this, or I didn't factor into this. So I feel like I need to develop the skills to manifest my ideas.
Mm. And I see it, there's two ways to look at it. You can, one, develop the skills to do it, or you can figure out how to like lead a team to get something done like that. And that's something that I've taken away, uh, especially with the engineering thing. I come from art design, advertising, also very heady of like, what's the problem? Let's talk about like the people. But the engineering section has really pushed me into like, okay, how can I communicate with these guys and see this vision through, uh, where it's not me having to learn all these skills. I will never be an engineer and I have no desire to, but knowing how to like communicate with these guys and how to make this vision possible, whether it's for my own uh, ventures or for company wide ones, being able to like express that vision and breaking things down into segments of like, okay, here's what we need to do first. This is the most important. We're going to get to the MVP. Let's do this sprint. All right, let's talk about how this went. And so all the methodologies on how to do that, I mean, even after one semester, have come in handy countless times.
That's awesome. And that's something I think I need to work on is I try so hard to be a one-man band. And it's like, no, probably don't need to try to do everything on my own. There's probably someone who's much better at this. and I
Yeah.
just need to communicate with them and make that connection, because a lot of times I feel like I'm on an island and I don't know how to reach out and connect. So I had actually learned about this program probably 10 years ago, and it's been on my wish list for such a long time. And you know, I'm a mom, and so for a little while I just really focused on that. But my daughter's older now, so I feel like I can come back and actually make time in my life to do this, at least on a part-time basis.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Ethan, I've got a question for you.
Of course.
So what originally, when you were applying to programs, what made you decide on the MPI as opposed to, say, going to the Robertson School, since you were in mass communications?
Yeah, even more specifically, like brand center, right? Is that
The
there's a
brand
huge
center is like
pipeline.
really,
It's a
yeah,
pipeline of like you
it
go to
sure is.
undergrad, and if you,
Because
you know,
I took 2 classes in mass communications, and they were
mhm.
already trying to sell me on that.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So it's like that through the whole program, and rightfully so. The Brand Center is a great school, and they do great things. I think what I liked about the MPI versus Brand Center or other programs that are like, just UX focused or art direction focused is I never felt like in those fields I could really solve the business problems. I remember I was doing a strategy campaign insight thing for Hertz car rentals. And, we came up with this cutesy campaign, and it was like a decent strategy.
Yeah.
But the real issue was like the way they were doing business, and they weren't adapting to anything. It didn't matter what we came up with for an advertising strategy. Like there are bigger issues at play here. And so I felt really like isolated into like, okay, cool, we can make campaigns and commercials and ads, but like, how do we change a business? How do we introduce new services? Uh,
Mhm.
how can we like shift this to evolve what we know in product? And so I think that was what drew me to the MPI, was this ability of like, I can be there in the design room. I can be there with like the product people. So not only can we hear like, oh, people don't like this about Hertz, we can give this insight to advertising people, but also let's give this insight to the business people and try and find out like, how do we change car rentals? Like, why haven't you guys partnered with Uber yet to give delivery drivers cars during COVID-19 instead of just trying to stick with travel? Like, there's infinite other options you guys could do. But,
So what I'm hearing from you is that there's kind of 2 aspects to it, why you chose MPI. One is that you get to communicate with more variety of people from across an organization, and the other is that you get to focus on a more like holistic business strategy as opposed to just focusing on, say, the marketing.
right. Yeah, I see it as true problem solving and solution creation, where before you might have an idea for how to solve the problem and it comes across through, customer perceptions. But
Mhm.
this is changing customer perceptions through changing product.
That makes sense.
Any other questions for Ethan before Mary Chris and I take over?
When you
Yeah, thank
talk
you for that
about,
insight, Ethan.
Oh, of course. Here, I'll drop my
yeah,
LinkedIn too, so you guys
that
can
was a,
message me anytime.
all right. So can you talk more about like what kind of communication, how the Da Vinci Center teaches communication?
Yeah, so I think we do it in a handful of ways. I think one, learning how to communicate with different stakeholders and knowing how to express things to different people. Like I have totally different presentations for when I'm sitting down with someone like Allison versus the client or versus like a mentor person. So somebody that realizing their breadth of knowledge, and so knowing the key points and what you need to express, and then like how to either take things out or put things in that are important is a skill that I felt like we learned all semester in our 590 class. And then, I again come from design. I'm not too hip to business. I thought that was going to be my least favorite class. It ended up being my favorite. And same with like engineering. Like I don't know anything about engineering, but the whole point of those classes was, especially engineering, was like, look, you guys aren't engineers. You're not going to be engineers. It's not worth your time to try, really. Like, it is such a deep field that we can't teach you how to be an engineer. But what we can do is figure out, like, okay, what do you guys need done? And how do we translate that into engineering language? What are they looking for when you give them a sheet? And what gives them permission to go and do things? And makes it like you want a good working environment too. So how do you not boss people around or hover behind their back, but you can actually give them something they can use and take it and run with it?
Mhm. So I'm hearing that it's very interdisciplinary, communication focused.
1,000%. And just learning like
I like
how
that
other people communicate. Oh, sorry, Susan, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry too. I was just gonna say, I like that the program really supports that collaboration, because that's so necessary. And, I feel like that can be a learned skill. It's easier said than done sometimes, and everyone
Yes.
has different personalities. So it's learning to be able to read that and respect that, and then the nuances on communication. So because I have a background in communication, I feel like I am a strong communicator, but I also recognize that, we're all at different levels and we have different, gifts and skills. And I'm the daughter of a nuclear engineer, so I also am aware of how challenging it can be to
Yes.
communicate with that type of thinking, but
Yep.
they are brilliant, and there's so much respect to be had.
Yes. And that's really what I took away, is like how to communicate with them, because they are so smart. We just speak different languages. And so you want that respect to be there, and you don't want it to be like, oh, great, here comes Ethan again talking about yada yada. But you want it to be like a fluent conversation where they can come to you and you can go to them and feel like you guys understand each other. And as far as the like supportive environment goes, that has been, I think, and I've heard this from multiple other people in my cohort, like the best thing about the MPI program for me has been my cohort and all the people I've met through it. We have a group chat that everybody's in, constantly texting each other. Uh, it's not competitive, and we're uplifting each other and sending each other resources. Like I know what every single person in my cohort is doing in their projects, in their interests, and when I see something that makes me think of them, or there's this company doing this thing, I'm able to send it to them. They send stuff to me, and so there's this like big support ecosystem. Maybe that's Richmond as a whole and BCU, but I really found it here where it's like we're constantly critiquing and building and uplifting each other to make better products. And we always have each other in mind, which has been like, I am going to miss that so much once we're gone, because it's just like, it is so rare to find an environment where you feel so in tune with everybody.
That's very meaningful. I agree.
It is.
That's awesome.
Saranja, welcome. I'm Garrett Westlake. I'm the executive director of the Da Vinci Center. We've had Ethan here joining us. He's a current student in the program, answering a couple of questions before myself and Mary Chris share some of the more specifics about the program. So if you have any questions for Ethan, I think he can join us for like one more minute or so. So feel free to ask him a question, and then Mary Chris and I'll take over.
Sure, thank you. I was using the Zoom link that was sent today in a different email, and there were a few people there, and I just decided to come back and look at the original email, and then this is how I found this meeting. So just want to let you know there were at least 3 people waiting. So then I just decided, okay, let me look at the original email and use the original Zoom link. But thank you for the filling in. I do not have any specific questions at this time, but I will sure to voice them when I have them. Thank you.
Thank you for that feedback. I'm going to turn my camera off for just a second, Garrett, while you kick us off, and see if I can maybe go troubleshoot that a little bit. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Of course.
That's great feedback. Thank you. Unfortunately, so one thing I've been really grateful for is the program has been face-to-face this last year, which has been really great. Ethan talked a lot about the culture of the program, and I think you'll find that the faculty as well, we really care about people. That culture is really important to us. So another piece that's important that goes with that is we've capped the program at 20 students. We do that on purpose so that we can create a real intimate environment, both for the cohort itself and then also for us as faculty, so that we can walk alongside students. I think we really enjoy seeing the individual passions and experiences of students and the ability to walk alongside them. And so you get a chance to do that when you keep programs small, when they can be face-to-face, when we can do some of these things. So apologies for the Zoom confusion today. But Ethan, thank you for joining us. Thanks for sharing some of your experiences with us.
Yeah, and I left my LinkedIn in the chat. Seriously, feel free to reach out anytime. If I do not know the answer, I can help find somebody that does. So,
good deal.
All right. Enjoy, guys. See you later, Garrett.
See ya. So I mentioned before, I'm Garrett Westlake. I'm the executive director of the Da Vinci Center here at VCU. And we really are thrilled that you're interested in our Masters of Product Innovation program. The Da Vinci Center offers a number of undergraduate and graduate as well as experiential programs at VCU, but the MPI is really our crown jewel. This is where you'll find some of the other more senior folks in the center, myself included, teach as faculty. This is where some of us really put our time and passion is into this master's program. And so we think that reflects in how the program is structured and what students get out of it. We've got a deck that I think Mary Chris can bring up that we'll go through with you some of the more nuts and bolts of the program. If you have any questions at any point, feel free just to drop them in the chat or just interrupt us and ask them. But wanted to contextualize for you all where the master's program fits. You'll see that at the undergraduate level, we teach product innovation, but we also teach venture creation and human-centered design. And why that's important, and we share that, is those absolutely show up in the Masters of Product Innovation. So in some regards, the Masters is the culmination of all of our best work. So you're going to get aspects of venture creation, which is applied entrepreneurship, as well as that human-centered design component, in addition to the product innovation. We've also seen a trend in the last several years where there's been a huge amount of momentum in healthcare innovation. And that's not just in response to the pandemic. We actually launched a new joint degree program with the School of Nursing in healthcare innovation just prior to the pandemic. And so you'll also find a significant theme of healthcare innovation in the program that's optional. So you can complete this, you'll see this graduate certificate in healthcare innovation alongside the master's program. So through a really great partnership with nursing, if you choose to structure your electives in the MPI program, you'll actually end up earning both. So you'll graduate with a master's of product innovation as well as a graduate certificate in healthcare innovation. And you won't take any additional courses if you choose your electives in that track. So if that's something you're interested in, just something to put out there, you can obviously you might end up working in something related to healthcare in the MPI and not earn the certificate. That is okay as well. But we've seen so much growth. And when you think about it, healthcare is very broad. So when we say healthcare, we are talking everything from, Peloton might qualify under that umbrella of what healthcare is. We're talking about wellness. So it's not like we're just talking about nitty-gritty medical devices that get implanted into people. But we're talking about real-world problem solving. One of our master's teams this last fall, their applied project was actually working on a really novel at-home COVID test. And so they were partnered with VCU clinicians to use some cutting-edge technologies and science coming out of VCU to sort of reimagine what our future of at-home testing might look like. So these are very real-world problems. And what's great is that our students don't have to be the absolute experts from the clinical side, to Ethan's point, but they have the ability to leverage their expertise in product alongside some of the clinical expertise.
And if you do want to go this option, I will I will point out that the courses are through the leadership track in School of Nursing. And so you can absolutely do the graduate certificate in healthcare innovation with no background in healthcare. So sometimes students have some concerns about that, but they are all about policy and how systems work and that kind of thing. So you're not expected to come into that with any previous nursing knowledge. We find that it can be helpful to just kind of talk about, as Garrett said, the nuts and bolts of what we do in our program as a way of kind of explaining what we do. Sometimes this is the easiest way. What I'm showing here is a sequence of courses. If you were to start with us in the summer, you also have an option to start with us in the fall. And I will also talk about a part-time option because I know, Susan, you mentioned that. But the easiest way to kind of go through the courses is to look at what it looks like on that kind of traditional 13-month summer start to the program. So we kick off with our NO600 class, which some of you may have seen if you've looked on our website, is typically a trip to the European Innovation Academy. It has not been that for the last 2 summers. We are certainly hopeful that that comes back. We did have the European Innovation Academy did put on an online version of that some students were able to participate in last summer. And we do have a course that we have created that is there to substitute for that if we are not able to travel. But the European Innovation Academy, we like to kind of call that the fire hose effect. It is taking a project from iteration to pitch in, I believe it's 3 weeks that you're there. And you get to, is that correct?
Yeah, it's to up the ante even more. So you work with these cross-disciplinary, cross-cultural teams over 3 weeks, and the target is that you have 1,000 paying customers for your product at the end of 3 weeks. No pressure.
Right. And so it's just a really amazing way to kick off the program and expose you to what we're going to then come back and break down a little bit for you in the fall. And it also puts you in an environment where, as Garrett just mentioned, it's an international environment. You are paired with students. You travel with a group from the MPI, but you are paired with students from other universities all across the world. And so just really giving you an amazing exposure to product design, product development, getting customers pitching, all of those kind of things.
And to add
go
one
ahead.
more piece there, Mary Chris, the other thing to know is there are 3 partner universities in the United States that are members of the European Innovation Academy, and that's UC Berkeley, Stanford, and the Da Vinci Center. So those students, our master's students, gain automatic acceptance. Students coming from other universities around the world have an entirely separate application process directly to the European Innovation Academy. So it's a highly competitive program that other students are applying directly for admission. But because of our status as a partner institution, we're able to bring our master's students directly into the program.
Great, yeah. In order to help prep you for that, we offer a series of NO691 special topics classes every summer. These range from everything from Scrum Master training to user research, user experience, user design, IP law, so intellectual property law. These are going to give you really great skills going into that experience at EIA. They're also just things that are amazing skills to gain throughout the time in the program. Students have especially found the Scrum Master training to be really invaluable as something that they take into the workforce or back to their current positions. These are all 1 credit offerings. They are all offered in the evenings to be flexible to students. And the idea is you kind of spend an intense week to week and a half to 10 days focusing on these subjects in 1 credit bites. We recommend usually taking about 3 of those because that really nicely fulfills elective credits that you need for the MPI. And I will mention, I'm going to talk about electives in a couple places. You are always welcome to do more than the 6 credits of required electives. So if you're thinking about that healthcare certificate and some of the things we talked about, you can also do the Scrum Master training and the user research training and all the things that we offer in these 691 classes. But we like to start with those foundational skills before students go to EIA. I will mention that those 691 courses are online. Obviously, we pivoted to that during COVID, but we have found that it works really well to have them online. It's going to kind of stop the awkward thing of students who are coming to us from outside of Richmond. We're having to kind of come to take those 691 classes and then travel to Europe and then travel back. And so we're going to be keeping those summer 691 courses online for students, just to help everybody kind of kick off either with the European Innovation Academy or by starting with us in the fall in our in-person classes. So we are committed to an in-person experience as much as we can be, but the summer will kick off online there. That's one of those kind of silver linings that we realized actually probably works better for our students. Then coming into the fall, you heard Ethan talk about his business class and his engineering class that he just completed this fall. And so the fall semester is really about sort of breaking down that big picture that you got in the NO600, the European Innovation Academy experience, or the equivalent of that. And doing a deep dive into the 501 class is looking at arts and design concepts. So how designers approach product innovation. 502 is looking at business concepts. 503 is that engineering and tech concepts. And Ethan was talking as a designer about how impactful the business and the engineering courses were. Students who have more of a background in business and engineering are also getting that language and that background in arts. And so the design here is to give you language in each of those disciplines to work on those cross-disciplinary teams. And so that's really what we're going for in that 501, 502, 503. You also will be practicing all those skills in the 590 course, which is the project course that, again, you heard Ethan reference and talk about. I'm going to let Garrett jump in and kind of talk about what some of the projects are, but this is a course where we find projects from local businesses, from VCU Health, from community partners, and then our students are placed on those projects to work as a team with students who do not have the same background that they do to solve the problems. And I'll let you take over from there, Garrett, and kind of talk about some of the projects.
Yeah, this is one of my favorite parts of the program, just for its sake of diversity. So you'll be on a 4-person, roughly 4 to 5 person team. You will all have a chance to participate in working on this one particular project through some different disciplines. And they really run the gamut. So we've had students in the past actually design a medical device. So a cardiac surgeon came to us and wanted a particular innovation to solve a problem. And the students on this particular device project, none of them had any medical experience. And they actually scrubbed into surgery with this surgeon in the OR and had the opportunity to scrub in where he was like, this is the problem I'm having. This is what's going on. And then their background was largely digital design, and the students were able to put together a physical prototype, look at the market opportunities, and at the end of their final presentation, at the end of the semester, the surgeon actually asked them to form a medical device company with him. And the culmination of that was not just hey, this is our final project, this was our presentation, but they actually formed a medical device company. And at the end of the program, we're accepted into an accelerator, and we're able to take that medical device into a national accelerator in Austin, Texas. So, again, your prior experiences don't matter when it comes to the success of these applied projects. And that's something we see students struggle with when this kicks off. They're like, wait, why am I on this project? I've never done that before. And that's probably why you're put on a project, is that you've never done that before. And we give you the opportunity to really push yourself. Another recent one is we worked with a company in Lighthouse Labs, and this company in Lighthouse Labs, which is a local accelerator here in Richmond, they're actually a top 25 nationally ranked accelerator for startup companies. And students had the opportunity to look at what a new digital product might look like for this startup company. And the final deliverable from the students to the startup was a pitch deck, including a wireframe for a mobile application that those startup founders took to venture capitalists and actually raised a $1.3 million Series A round on the work that the students had done. And we're able to take the insights and the technical work the students had done and raise a venture round to support the growth of their company. We also work with large Fortune 500 companies. So we also do a number of projects with Pfizer, Capital One, CarMax. So a lot of those, big players. And we've done everything from looking at, interface design for them to physical product to potential new market opportunities. And so what you learn is not only how to work in a team, how to solve some of these problems and bring it all the way to a point of implementation, but you learn from all the other students in your cohort about their project. And so the class is really designed not just for you to solve your problem in isolation, but to learn, oh, that's really interesting how you all are solving this at CarMax. That's totally different than what we're doing with a startup. That's totally different than what we're doing with the surgeon. And it's really the ability to see what product looks like in all of those different settings that also informs that class.
And so the summer and fall, the kind of first 2 semesters, are really focused on product. And one way I kind of like to explain this, especially if students have been through our undergraduate programs or are familiar with our undergraduate programs, the master's program really kind of takes that undergraduate product innovation and the undergraduate venture creation and meshes them all together and brings them up a level to the master's level programming. As we transition into this kind of second part in the spring is when we really transition into that idea of venture creation and entrepreneurship. And so when you move into the NO 651 course, in that course, students take an idea they have themselves, or an idea from maybe one of those 590 projects, or there's all kinds of places that we have access to help students formulate ideas. So if you're coming to us without a business right now that in mind, don't kind of be tripped up by that or worry about like, oh, I don't have a business in mind. This is not the program for me. But that NO 651 is about how do you take an idea and move it forward as an entrepreneur to start a business. And so you're learning all those skills and getting to practice those. And as I mentioned, some students come in or develop over the course of the first semester, develop an idea that they want to take forward themselves. Sometimes they partner with someone else in the class to do that. We also work with the health system where they have a bunch of ideas that students can pull from and take and move forward. So there's lots of different ways that you can work on that idea, but basically in the 651, you're going to, in a very hands-on way, learn the skills around venture creation, entrepreneurship, making sure you're serving the right customer, doing customer validation, customer ideation, ideation around that, looking at business planning and marketing. Garrett, I think you're a little more familiar with some of the things students have done in that course if you want to talk about that more, but essentially it's giving you that hands-on experience of starting your own venture.
Yeah, I think what's really fun about the difference between a 651 course in the spring and your 590 class in the fall is in the 590 course, you're working essentially for someone else, right? So Capital One says, we've got this wicked problem, help us figure this out. The startup says, we've got this problem, help us work it out. In 651, you get to identify a problem and you have complete control. And that can be that's often really intimidating, which is why we put it later in the program, because in 590, there are guardrails. There's someone else to say, oh, well, sure, if we could go, if Dominion weren't an energy company, we could go in this new route and do this, but we're an energy company, so we need to stay in this lane. And in 651, you're really able to take it wherever the research and insights tell you it needs to go. And so what's really great about that is you have the ability to say, here's a problem or something I would like to solve for, and enter into it with like, how can I learn more about the problem? And oh my gosh, I had no idea that the problem I'm solving for isn't for millennials. It's actually for people that live in 55 plus communities, or the solution needs to be digital, or it needs to be physical, or this, that, and the other. What has worked really well for some of our students, if you're still struggling with like, what does that look like? And for some students, the end of 651 looks like launching a crowdfunding campaign. So I really like crowdfunding personally, things like Kickstarter, Indiegogo, because they do a couple things. They validate in the market your price points, your product. It's a great way to establish an MVP. And so if you think about the end of your semester looking like you have the ability to upload a pitch video to Kickstarter, you've identified what the pricing would be for your minimum viable product. You're looking at target demographics to find who your customers might be and where are you going to find them? Is that on Instagram? Is that through social campaigns? So everything that's involved in a successful crowdfunding campaign like that is what you're going to learn in 651. What's your business plan look like? Who are your customers? What is your minimum viable product? And you're going to bring that to the point of, wow, this started as like my own hunch about why this existed. And it ends with me actually having the skills and the process in place to take the next step. which leads us to 652. You'll notice that it's a two-part capstone. So the way this works is there are a couple options for your final semester. So we recognize that entrepreneurship is hard. We actually see it as a benefit that most of these things don't work, right? So you may have spent all of 651 really pursuing this venture and the solution, only to come to the conclusion that, you know what, that's not solvable this way. It didn't work. And that is a really valuable, underrepresented, under-celebrated outcome. So one thing that happens is you get to the end of 651 and you're like, wow, my startup concept doesn't work. We work to help students find, and oftentimes they find them on their own, internships to fulfill this last semester credit, these last 6 credits. And unlike just doing an internship on your own, it's really a supportive internship. We talk about it as winning the internship. So the faculty that teach this course are there to help you maximize your experience. And we have assignments in that course that are designed to help you do that. Meaning your internship requires you to, say, have lunch with a senior vice president at the company where you're interning. We do all sorts of 360-degree feedback exercises at your job site in order to help get feedback about your performance and opportunities for advancement. And so you're not just thrown into an internship on your own. We are really there to help you strategize. And sometimes that just looks like being given an assignment at the internship and being able to come to your faculty and say, they want me to do this. Do you think I should use this approach? Do you know of any other tools that could help me do this? And we can help you, be a sounding board and strategize with you. So internship is one option. There are some students for who 651, they feel like they're onto something. I mentioned the Kickstarter outcome. Maybe you've launched a Kickstarter campaign, and this has happened where at the end of 651, you launch a Kickstarter campaign and it gets funded, right? Like the market does respond to what you're doing. The other option in 652 is to actually move your own venture forward. And this can look differently. Some students want to actually start a company and want this to be their full-time livelihood. The high water mark is certainly, we had one student in 651 raise a $300,000 angel investment round in the course of that class. So in the course of doing, customer discovery and identifying an MVP, he was able to raise $300,000 in seed funding to launch this. So in 652, he was running his company. That's what he was doing. My background, I ran a tech company for 4 years. I'm an entrepreneur that's raised around. I really like digging in with students that are doing 652 and running a venture. And we look at, how do you raise capital? How are you raising seed rounds? How are you filing your articles of incorporation? How are you protecting your intellectual property? And then things like crowdfunding, how are you fulfilling those orders? How are you building your customer base? How are you making good on the delivery that you promised? So you have the ability to sort of choose your own adventure right there at the end, which is great because I think we teach a lot of intrapreneurship, entrepreneurship, product, and a variety of different settings. And that last semester, you kind of get to double down and say, you know what, I'm going to go to Capital One, do this internship and product, really focus on with them with the hopes of getting a job in industry. Or you're able to say, you know what, when else am I going to have the chance to try and make a run at my own company? I'm going to go for it. And it can be both. So there have been students who say, I'm going to take full advantage of this master's program opportunity. I'm going to take an internship for the summer and work on this while also continuing to work on my 651 project in the background. And we had one student, Matt Sozio. He actually had developed a novel technology called the French slide. So he invented a door that opens like a sliding door and then also opens like a set of French doors. And he patented the technology and was in the process of trying to work out a licensing deal and advancing his startup company for the French slide technology. But he took a summer internship with Xerox in New York City. And at the end of his internship with Xerox, they offered him a position as a director level job doing innovation for Xerox. And so he continued to work full time as a director of innovation for Xerox and had a side business going of licensing his door technology that he had worked on as well through the program. So these aren't always exclusive options. Some people use their crowdfunding campaign just to generate some extra cash. And are like, hey, I made $5,000, $10,000 through this crowdfunding campaign while I also did this internship. So it's really a way just to round out your experience. And we start talking early about that 652 experience in the program. So in the fall semester, we are talking a lot about what that end of your program is going to look like. We're talking about other prospective companies you'd like to intern with. We're really leveraging our networks to make sure that we can connect you with people at those companies and start laying the groundwork well in advance of that final semester.
And every student is assigned a mentor or a rotation of mentors, actually, from our faculty in the MPI program. And so those early conversations are happening with those mentors. And you don't have to come in knowing exactly like which way students pivot all the time or decide to do two things, like Matt, like you were talking about, but coming in kind of with some thoughts around kind of generally what you're thinking, so you can talk through in those mentorship meetings, places you might want to work, things you're wanting to explore. We can start early on helping make those connections. I'll just really quickly mention, you see that elective there in spring 2023. The 6 credits of electives are really designed to kind of help you gain skills that you feel like you need alongside the MPI program. And so often students will take 3 of those 691 courses to fulfill half of those credits. The other 3 can come from any master's level course at the university. And so we've had students, for example, interested in doing something in looking at sustainable practices or environmentalism, and they've taken classes in public policy with Wilder School. We have a current student right now who's really interested in teaching. So he's taking a curriculum development course in School of Education. Lots of things you can do there. We certainly have students who want to do a deeper dive on business background, and they take courses through the MBA in marketing and management. So lots of flexibility in that elective. You also have an option to do a guided study or an independent study for that. So if there is a topic you want to do a deep dive on that we just can't find you a class for, that is something you can do. We had one of our graduates do a deep dive into semiotics, and he worked with a professor in marketing and School of Business. So lots of flexibility with those elective credits. Again, kind of in the choose your own adventure, make this what you want. Those especially last 3 elective credits are often something that you just want to do a deeper dive on or feel you need more experience in.
And another option that has worked well for some students for that elective is doing an independent study where they're working with a VCU faculty member or researcher that believes they have a novel invention, but has no experience bringing that to market. So maybe there's someone that's developed a new battery technology that shows incredible promise, but this is a research team that lives in their lab running experiments, and they would like help. What does the actual product look like? And so there have been students that have, as an independent study, worked to be essentially the product manager for a VCU-based technology, and have actually joined that team and had, negotiated equity stakes as a part of that original team to bring things to market. So that's something that has happened as well. There's no shortage of, again, this is really meant to allow you to explore what you are most interested in. So this is like, I want another portfolio piece bringing something to market. I want another portfolio piece working with industry in a corporate setting. I want managerial experience. I want, this is your chance to sort of round out your experience.
And just to give you a little bit of an idea what that looks like, if you do want to go part-time, we absolutely have that option for you. This is just kind of how the courses sequence out. If you, instead of doing that 13 to 18 month, and so if you start our program in the summer, it runs from summer to summer. It's a 13-month program. If you start with us in the fall and go full-time, it runs summer through the next fall. So that's where that 13 to 18 months for the full-time program comes in. But if you are interested in going part-time, I think the really amazing thing is, because we are a 13 to 18 month master's, if you need to go part-time, it still only takes 2 years to complete the program. And so with the way courses are sequenced out, with those 500 level courses being offered in the fall semester only, this just gives you a little bit of a feel for what that could look like. You can also do a part-time start in the summer. These are things that one of my roles at Da Vinci is to serve as advisor to master's students. I am happy to talk with prospective students. If you're thinking this looks good to you on a part-time basis, but you would need to start in the summer, I can talk you through what that would look like as well. But this is just to give you kind of a feel for how it can be done and what it would look like for you on a part-time basis. I also will mention, we do have recordings, and these will come out in a follow-up email, but we have a recording with Isaiah Harvin, who is a student who went part-time through the program. And I talked to him some, and I believe we asked him in the interview in that information session about this. But I remember he had some concerns about like being part-time and the cohort, which those of you that were here when Ethan was talking mentioned his cohort and the power of that. What Isaiah really found was he actually got to connect with 2 cohorts. So when you go part-time, you kind of overlap 2 different cohorts through the MPI, and it just increases that network of connection that you have. I will say that he was someone who really like jumped in with both feet to that and took advantage of lots of opportunities that we had going on, you know, alongside his full-time job. But coming into it with that attitude, I think it's a really amazing way to connect with even more people who are like-minded and doing things that you're interested in. So full-time is a great option, but part-time is also a really, really viable option if that's what feels best to you and with what you're juggling, you know, with work and family and things like that.
And just to second that, you know, we have had, you know, in addition to being a cross-disciplinary program, we really value building diverse cohorts of students that represent people that have lots of time spent in industry, in the work environment, that have families, that have that experience, as well as people that are maybe coming closer to straight out of undergrad. We take all of that into consideration in building a cohort to really make sure that it's as rich as possible. And oftentimes the feedback we get from students is that that leads to an even greater set of learning from with each other in the cohort. So know that, you know, there are some hard semesters. I'm not going to lie, as someone that did my own PhD, taking largely evening courses, like I can tell you that it can be hard, but when you look at this, know that things like that NO651 course that are 6 credits, that's still just 1 night a week. So when we're talking about this, you know, from an actual calendaring scheduling standpoint, you're talking about going to class 1 night a week. That in these really busy semesters of the NO500s, you're talking about 2 nights a week of class. Some of these electives can be flexible, right? If it's an independent study, you have a lot of flexibility around when you are meeting with mentors or faculty. It can be a lot of independent work. So, and Isaiah is a great example of someone that did go through the program part-time while working. He's now the chairman of our alumni advisory board. And he built such a strong network that when Isaiah graduated, he was actually recruited and took a job leading product for HBO Max. So he graduated from the program. And now if you are a customer of HBO Max, you are directly interfacing with Isaiah's work, which is pretty phenomenal. And we're thrilled for him. So.
Yeah. And just a little bit more technical information, and then we will absolutely take questions. How to apply, there's a link on our webpage that actually does take you out to the VCU graduate school. So I always just like to prepare people. You're going to click the link on our page to apply now, and it's going to take you out to the application that's live on the graduate school site. There is going to be an application for summer and fall, so just be aware of that, and notice, you know, make sure you're clicking the right one for what you want to apply for. We can always switch that on the back end if you are thinking fall and then change your mind, but there are 2 applications out and live right now. There's the one due February 15th for summer, and then there's a fall one sitting there as well. And then just to be clear about what we need by February 15th, because it can seem kind of like a lot as you're going through the application, you know, lots of different things that need to be submitted. And so I just want to clarify a couple things. We do need your statement of intent. What we're going for there's some guidance on the application itself and on our website, but we really want to get to know you and know what your interest is in this program, how you kind of see this fitting into your long-term plans, and really just, again, know you, who you are as a person. We would like to see a resume. And then for references, we need the names and emails of 3 references, but this is not the kind of thing where you have to have letters that you're attaching and you're submitting all of that by the 15th. We just need the names and emails. You'll want to give those folks that you asked to do that a heads up that they will get an email with like a form to check off some things and a place to upload a letter of recommendation for you. We will need 2 of those 3 letters to be in before we read over everything to decide if we're going to have you come in for an interview, but we do not need them exactly perfectly there on the 15th when you submit your application. You do also need to enter transcript request into the system. So that just, again, just means you have to have entered the request that you're asking for your undergraduate transcripts to be sent over. We don't have to have those here. There is a place for you to upload an unofficial transcript if that's something that you have. So you can upload that into the application system. Also, if you are someone who did your undergraduate work at VCU, you do need to put the request in, but you don't have to pay for a transcript. The graduate school can pull that. It's all in the same system, so they can take a look at that. Portfolio is optional for all applicants. There's some language that that I think we were not able to get switched on the application, so I do want to stress this. We used to require portfolio if you were coming from an art or design background. We also used to require standardized testing if you were coming from another background. So we are no longer requiring that. I'll talk more about that in just a second. We're no longer requiring that standardized testing. So we are also no longer requiring a portfolio for candidates coming from an art and design background. However, we would actually encourage all of you to submit some form of portfolio. Again, what we're really looking for in this process is who you are as a human, who the people we're bringing into our program are, what they are interested in learning from us, what they are going to be contributing to the team and the cohort. So just like that statement of intent is a piece of your personality, a portfolio is really a chance for you to show us some things that are not maybe easily accessible on your resume. This could look like a personal website where you have, a great about page where you maybe share some things that you have done. If you are coming from an arts and design background, some things that you've done in that field, but it could also be, presentations that you've done for work that you do. It could be examples like writing samples. We've had students submit music samples of things they've created, but really just kind of think of it as that personal website where you would be sharing some of your work, whatever that work is, and maybe a little bit more about who you are as a person. There's not really again, a lot of people are doing that now as a website. It could also be a PDF, but those come into us as part of the application process. Those could also,
I was gonna say, just because you brought it up, Susan, I mean, something like if there was a particular CAD project that you had worked on, that you were proud of, that you were like, this turned out really well, I just enjoyed working on this. Sharing something like that is a great option under this portfolio heading.
Absolutely. And I'm always happy to talk through with people, like if you're kind of thinking through, really nothing is the wrong thing to share, but if you want to think it through and brainstorm, I'm happy to do that. I will also note that can come a little bit later than February 15th as well. That is a separate submission that comes directly to me, and then I add it to your folder. So, if that is not perfectly ready by the 15th, and you want to go ahead and submit by that deadline, submit everything else, and then you can send that a little bit later. We would again love to have that before we move forward with an interview, but it doesn't have to be there right on the 15th. And then, as I mentioned, we do no longer require any kind of standardized testing, no GRE, no GMAT, none of those things. We waived it during COVID, as many graduate programs did, just because it was so hard to get test and scores. And we found it made zero difference in our cohort, which was kind of our suspicion going in. And so we really don't want you to have that extra financial burden and hassle of doing that test. Speaking of that, I will also mention there is an application fee for graduate programs. If for any reason that is something that is stopping you from hitting submit, please send me an email. My email will be in the follow-up that you get from this. I'll also try to remember to put it in the chat while we're taking questions, but we are happy to waive that application fee if that feels like a barrier for any reason. Also, I will mention, if you do want to do the graduate certificate in healthcare innovation, it is 2 separate applications, and 100% please do not pay 2 application fees. So even if it is not a burden for you to pay that once, please send me an email so that we can waive the fee on that second application, because you should not have to pay twice to do both of those programs with us. And that is all we had kind of on the nuts and bolts side of things. I'm gonna stop my screen share and we would love to take questions.
That's awesome. You actually answered a lot of my questions about the portfolio, because I've been brainstorming that a lot, and I have a couple items that I think would be good, but maybe I'm just a little hard on myself because I haven't spent so much time in recent years on art specifically, so I feel like it might be a little weak, but I'm encouraged to hear the feedback you guys are sharing.
And we definitely have people who are have a background in art and haven't done it in a while, or we also have people who don't have a formal background in that share those kind of things with us. So please do, because we really recognize that people have things that don't show up on a resume and don't show up on a transcript as things that are skills and areas of interest. So it sounds like you're on the right track there.
So you all mentioned the European Innovation Academy. What do you think are the chances that that will go through in 2022? I know that it's kind of hard to guess, but just curious.
We were feeling really good about it to the point where I think we were like 95%. If you'd asked me that question in, November, I would have told you 95% certain. We've been working really closely with them. We were excited to return in person this year. Omicron has obviously put a little bit of a wrinkle in that. I'm back to feeling a little more optimistic, only because we're hoping, right, that with continued, that maybe the decline is as steep as the rate up. Also, we're just keeping an eye out. Sounds promising, right? That Pfizer's like, we'll have an Omicron specific shot come March. I mean, I think that, if at all possible, we would like to bring that back and make that an option in person. What I do know is that there is going to be an option for those folks that don't want to choose that as 600 to complete that course here. So, don't be afraid of, like, it's not going to throw anybody off. If you're like, oh, I want to start this summer, I want to do European Innovation Academy, and if for some reason we're not able to go, you're going to be able to complete that course here and stay on track. Likewise, if you're like, I really want to start this summer, I know it's not going to work for me to go over there and do the abroad program. There will be an option to complete a course equivalent here. So, I'm hopeful. I still remain pretty optimistic. I think VCU's decision to remain in person, keep on the normal academic schedule for the spring is a good sign. We'll see what the future holds, but I'm optimistic. And I have not always been so optimistic in the last 2 years, but I'm feeling optimistic about the return of EIA for this summer.
Okay. Sounds very cool.
And just important note on that, we do provide accommodations during that program. So students are responsible for their own airfare over to, so it's previously been in Italy and Portugal. And so we're still finalizing which of those sites if we returned. So they do have 2 choices. So we're working with them to find which one will be best for us, whether it's Torino or whether it's Portugal. And so we're looking at those 2 options, but we do pay for the accommodations while you're over there.
Mm-hmm. That's funny because Portugal is actually a country that I've looked into doing a study abroad for, related to public policy. So,
and a lot of students do travel pre and post. I mean, so one of the reasons that students do book their own airfare, which allows people to travel before the program starts, after the program starts. A lot of students in the past have enjoyed meeting some new people at the European Innovation Academy and leaving open their travel plans, and then traveling with people they met during the 3 weeks and spending a couple weeks going to visit them or traveling with them. And so there definitely is a lot of that has historically taken place.
Very cool.
I just want to let you know that thank you so much for the information. Actually, you answered a lot of my questions in the presentation. Thank you for that. I actually have another commitment, so I have to leave the meeting. I will definitely follow up with any questions I have about the applications and the programs altogether. Thank you for putting this together.
Great.
Thank you.
Have a good day. Yeah, bye-bye.
Right, bye. Yes, I was going to note also, we are kind of at our stop time. We are happy to stay and answer questions, but if you do need to go, feel free if this is a lunch break kind of thing for you.
Yeah, I just had one last question, and I think I know the answer, but looking at the VCU grad site, I found the 2 options for the 2:15 deadline and the 5:15, and under the pop-up for program description, it cites, I'm guessing it's old requirements, since it is specifying like the GRE and GMAT stuff. Okay, so take that like a grain of salt.
Yes, that's why we
But
bring it up here. Yep.
got it. And then it does mention, portfolio as far as like 15 to 20 examples of work. Would you say that's still an accurate representation of what you guys are looking for with the portfolio, or not necessarily?
No, yeah, those are the old requirements. Those are, you probably are familiar with this. Those are one of those like one time a year you can update this kind of thing. So we'll get it updated
Gotcha.
for the next cycle, but those are the old requirements for GRE and for the portfolio when it was a substitute for standardized testing. So we're really looking for whatever makes sense to you to kind of showcase who you are to us.
Excellent. And Garrett, you did answer my question relevant to the study abroad, because I would love to study abroad, but just with my life right now, it would be very hard for me to leave my daughter. So it's nice to know that that's an option, that we can still do it essentially virtually, no matter what the COVID variants go.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Awesome. This has been excellent. And I don't know if you can tell in my voice, I'm very, very excited. I have waited a long time to move forward on this, and finally feels like the stars are aligning. So again, I really appreciate the information.
Great.
Awesome. Great. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. You too.
Yeah.
Any other questions, Andrew?
Yeah, I was thinking about some of the ideas that I've had for a venture, and also some of the other directions that I might go regarding this program. So I really liked that there's an opportunity to take any master's level program. That sounds really cool. I don't know how I'm going to choose if I go forward with this.
Well, and we definitely have, this is really the first time I've seen it with this cohort that Ethan's in, but I mean, you can take additional electives. And so if you are pursuing this as a full-time student, you're basically, there's a flat full-time tuition rate. And so and that covers 9 to 15 credits. And so, a lot of students are just opting to take an extra class. So keep that in mind. Like, you have to have the 6, but
Gotcha.
You can have more if you want and have the capacity.
And, and I will say, I think, Andrew, one of the things that I think is particularly advantageous about the program is it gives you the structure and support to pursue multiple paths at the same time. And I think if you were on your own, typically people have to double down, I'm going to work, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And that's what I'm doing for the next year. Or that's what I'm doing for the next 6 months. We can help with the structure of, here's a group, they just need someone to do 10 hours a week of product management for them to advance this new thing. We can frame that for you in a way that you can compartmentalize those 10 hours. And then you can say, I'm also taking all these public policy courses, I'm pursuing, and we had a student gain a whole nother certificate in nonprofit management. So you can do whole other cognates of work alongside this. And the structure allows you to make that manageable. It can be challenging, but you can kind of compartmentalize and block a lot of those things together.
That makes sense. A nonprofit management certificate would probably be right up my alley.
You should look into, it's with Wilder School, and it pairs really nicely. So basically 6 of the credits from that count as your electives for us. And I don't want to talk off the top of my head about how many credits total, but I feel like it's just 2 or 3 more classes over that you take to get the certificate. So it's kind of like the healthcare thing with us, it's just a different pairing of the certificate. So definitely explore that.
I've been talking with Alfred a little bit about this program, and I told him about one of the ideas that I was thinking about bringing here, which is I noticed that you all were talking about healthcare innovation, but I think innovation in the spheres of biology more generally is really taken off in the last 5 years or so. And I also noticed that I did some research, and there looks like there's not enough lab space for biology, technology, R&D. So I was thinking a company that specialized in providing space for R&D teams in the biotech industry would be a potentially good direction to go.
If that is an area of interest, 2 points of note. One of our faculty members in Da Vinci is also a faculty member in bioinformatics. And we have some crossover. He teaches in both. Secondarily, Activation Capital, which is the Virginia Biotech Park downtown. I'm on their board, and we are looking at building a new lab innovation incubation space that would allow early stage companies access to exactly what you described as part of a new innovation park downtown. So
that would be very cool.
So there are projects. I mean, I say that not only just as to validate, I think your thinking is correct, but also we have partners that are actively doing that work. And so when we talk about independent studies, when we talk about capstone projects, if that was something, there are people that are very enmeshed in that we could connect you with, that you could turn into one of those projects.
That would honestly be fantastic. I was doing my research in the Research Triangle Park area of North Carolina. That's where I noticed needed a lot of space in particular. And that's was very convenient because my mom lives in that area also.
Cool.
I did not know that there was one popping up in Richmond also though. Do you know like what geographical region part of Richmond it was in?
Yeah, so this is just right there on Lee Street, right next to the MCV Student Commons.
That makes sense. Gotcha. Okay, yeah, that sounds really, really interesting. I don't know, I have a lot of different interests. I came from interdisciplinary studies, so I'm thinking like, well, I could be a nonprofit